I was watching Ghostbusters Afterlife, and something struck me. There are multiple places where the Ghostbusters quote Revelations. But why would they? We know this isn't a Christian world. The Ghostbusters have fought gods multiple times, and Egon is specifically planning against the Sumerian god Gozer. It makes no sense that they would bother with Christianity at all, since they know they live in a pagan world. This is actually very common in fiction, and especially in horror. After all, these movies are inherently religious. If you have demons running around, God cannot or will not protect you. If you have ghosts, it's clear that the afterlife isn't just heaven, heck, and purgatory. If you have Cthulhu and other eldritch entities, it's clear your creation myth was at best missing a couple of steps. And it's questionable if there even is a God who cares about humanity. In fact, it's rare to see any fantasy written in a Christian setting that actually addresses the big guy. The problem is that the Christian God is a bit of a story breaker. You have omniscience and omnipotence to deal with. It's the Superman problem up to 11. How can there be a conflict when the leader of one side could unmake the opposition with a thought, knows everything that will be, and actively cares about the situation? You have a Deus just waiting to ex machina, and you need to explain why he doesn't. Now, different authors have handled this in many different ways. Tolkien handled this in Middle-earth by having the direct intervention of the Valar be disastrous for the world. The end of the Silmarillion is the War of Wrath, where the archangels finally released their powers and stopped Morgoth. The battle was so intense that it destroyed a chunk of the continent. Therefore, while falling back to the higher powers is possible, our heroes still need to win to save Middle-earth as they know it. Another idea that crops up is that it's all part of God's grand plan. I generally can't stand this concept, because it destroys all dramatic tension. The book Wrinkle in Time had a trio of angels send 3 children to a planet ruled by the forces of evil. Even as a kid, it bothered me. The only conclusion was that it was fated that our heroes would win, with no major sacrifices. If you know you have to win, then any choice the characters make is meaningless, since you know it will be the right one. The works of Neil Gaiman struggle with this a lot. Lucifer explicitly questions this in Sandman, and concluded that if he hadn't fallen, another would have in his place. The finale of Good Omens has Aziraphale and Crowley realizing that the whole story had been part of the grand plan, and worry what the Almighty has in store next. DC as a whole has the Christian God above everything, and this panel from Hellblazer taking the form of a tiny terrier. Why he just doesn't solve everything is extremely unclear. But he's either powerless, or trying to stick to some grand plan that involves the hero fixing everything instead of just snapping his fingers. On the other hand, country music, with its close ties to gospel, has taken a completely different direction by having their ghosts be mostly benevolent. Most famously in The Ride, Hank Williams gives a young David Allan Coe a lift to Nashville, and Private Malone has a car haunted by a ghost who helps the new owner. Alternatively, The Devil Went Down to Georgia is a classic folktale where a youth tricks a relatively powerless devil. These fit right into the Christian worldview, as the souls are benevolently sent to aid, similar to the saints in the court of God, and Satan is reduced to a mere trickster. However, the easiest and most common way to deal with God is just to write him out of the story altogether. Role-playing games tend to go with the mythology mashup with gods of multiple pantheons, so there's no Almighty here. Additionally, most settings require that gods need belief to survive, giving them a reason to get followers, Even games like Diablo and Bayonetta, which draw heavily on Christian mythology and symbolism, are explicitly worlds without God in charge. The side of good is governed by angels, and good and evil are in balance, with Houston's on the side mostly ignored or used for advantage. Continuing on, most horror just ignores God entirely. Faith is used as a shield or weapon, but it's shown matching good with evil in a mostly balanced way. God is just lounging around in the background doing nothing, even when it appears that the fate of the world is jeopardized. That's just bad writing. You can't say that you have an almighty presence and then just have him do nothing for the entire story. The only time I've seen this actually handled well was the animated adaptation of Dante's Inferno. Now, this was so loosely based on the epic poem that's hardly even related. The short form is that Dante has to fight his way through heck. However, the finale, where Dante has to fight Lucifer, finds our hero completely outmatched. His solution? Pray. The implication is that he could have done this at any time, but didn't, and God didn't interfere earlier because Dante needed to learn and atone for his sins. This is the one time I've seen that the divine plan actually works, since Dante benefits from his trials. So, in conclusion, I can't offer any advice, except that writers need to be cognizant of what they are writing into their worlds. And there isn't any bigger pitfall than an involved almighty that should be able to solve everything in a moment, but doesn't for story reasons. Thanks for listening, y'all.